Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 248, and we're going to talk about American exceptionalism. So we're still waiting on Trump's picks, and you know what? I was reminded by the bunch of people that I listened to today that there's a lot of analysis, microanalysis, but all of the picks, well, most of the picks still have to be confirmed. And then the question also is, are they going to be effective? I listened to Peter Schiff, and he went through the problem of the government efficiency uh, program department, where they're going to be sort of an extra government entity where they can only make recommendations, and everyone else can just sort of take it or leave it. In other words, the weight or force of their recommendations, there won't be much behind it at all. Congress uh, formed or started these programs, a lot of the programs, and Congress therefore has to bring them to an end, apparently. Also, Ronald Reagan tried to end the Department of Education right after Jimmy Carter started it, right? But he was unable to close it. Even after just a few years, there are so many people who are now invested into that program that getting rid of it would cause such an outcry. So maybe things are a lot different than they are in Argentina, where you can't just simply dissolve certain programs. I think they really should talk to Ron Paul and how he was going to do it. I hope they do, but you never know. Also, there are theories that some of these are just trial balloons. Uh, the names, putting them out to see what the reaction would be, or even just to keep people guessing. Maybe there is some 3D chess going on. Who knows? So there's a lot of speculation at this point, and it's enough to make one lose their mind. And so, uh, something to think about anyway. But as far as, and so all of that made me, especially the pro-Israel rhetoric, got me thinking about American exceptionalism. So in Britannica Encyclopedia, they explain American exceptionalism as that idea uh, that the United States of America is unique and even morally superior. It's a morally superior country for historical, ideological, or religious reasons. Proponents of American exceptionalism generally pair the belief with the claim that the United States is obligated to play a special role in global politics. I feel like all my childhood, high school discussions um, that came up in history class, should America be the policeman of the world? And that was, late 70s, early 80s. That was often discussed in high school classrooms. And I think it's because of this American exceptionalism idea. So again, from Britannica, from the founding, you have from its very start, the United States had Republican ideals rather than a ruling elite. So the idea of spreading the way of life beyond the borders is considered a good thing. There's reverence to the Judeo-Christian God, advocacy of a free market, and prioritization of the individual over the needs of the collective. Um, where did it come from? Alexis de Tocqueville. Ah, I looked this up before the pronunciation just to make sure. Uh, Tocqueville. He talked about America as being exceptional, but he only did that, that wasn't like his main point. It is interesting that the communists of the 1920s and 30s talk about American exceptionalism because of the blurring of class lines, right? There is no history of feudalism, class structure, which would make a violent class warfare possible, which is what communists say that you need to have for there to be a communist revolution. And because of the absence, because of so much social mobility, it's harder to have that revolution. And so they use that term exceptionalism, right? In the sense that it's different from a lot of these European countries that had a lot of class-based separation hierarchy. In the 2010s, the Republican Party started using this American exceptionalism to mean that America was great, right? America greatness, right? The idea goes back to the Puritan colonists in New England in the 1600s when John Winthrop, the first governor of Massachusetts, talked about, you know, the American experience as the city on a hill, right? And so this, I never read that book. I saw it a lot around me. Even at church, people would talk about the city on a hill. Now I feel like I should have read it. That way I'd know what all these people are talking about. But I did see that book in church as well. And so I thought it was, now that I think about it, isn't it kind of interesting that in churches would talk about the city on a hill, the city being the United States, shining its exceptionalism to the rest of the world. So Britannica goes on to say that, it begins with the Puritans in the 1600s, turns into manifest destiny. Uh, you know, God gave a mission to the Americans to extend its way of life across the continent in the 1840s. And then in the 1890s, its expansion beyond the American borders, right? You see conflicts then happening beyond the borders. And then in the 20th century, you see American exceptionalism is supposed to be used to oppose communist governments. Then looking at Wikipedia, which has a different kind of information set, introduces us to Seymour Martin Lipset, who was a scholar through the 50s and 60s, I believe. And he began his scholarship as sort of a leftist. He leaned to the left. And then later on, he becomes one of the first neocons and basically pro-war type person. Neoconservative is what this stands for. So he therefore traces origins of American exceptionalism to the American Revolution, from which the U.S. emerged as the first new nation with a distinct ideology and having a unique mission to transform the world. This ideology, which Lipset called Americanism, but is often referred to as American exceptionalism, is based on liberty, individualism, republicanism, democracy, meritocracy, and laissez-faire economics. These principles are sometimes collectively referred to as American exceptionalism. So that's American exceptionalism in a little bit more detail. And I think Lipset's explanation of American exceptionalism comes from the Revolution. And so he was talking about, the liberty, individualism, republicanism, democracy, meritocracy, laissez-faire economics. Probably post World War II, there's that euphoria. I wasn't alive. Well, I was alive in the 60s, but I was really young. So there's that thing where America is kind of special. Like, why is there so much wealth in the United States? Why is life so much better than anywhere else in the world, particularly in Europe? I mean, they're just coming out of a world war where everything is just destroyed. In contrast to the Soviet Union, where there were jokes when I was a kid anyway, where everything is colorful in the United States and everything is drab and gray in the Soviet Union, right? Because they just don't have enough. And so they just need the bare minimum so that everyone is at least clothed, but there's no color, right? There's no happiness. And so I grew up with that. And so the argument for American exceptionalism was interesting. It was appealing. Like, yeah, we got stuff that other people don't have, especially when you see people coming from other countries, they're always poor. And so the idea and the impression you get is that, yeah, we have it better here in the United States. However, looking back now in 2024, it's a bit absurd now to continue to assert this American exceptionalism, right? Because meritocracy is disappearing here. At least on the federal level, it's not meritocracy anymore. That is government by merit. It's because you're the best. That's why you rise in the ranks, you rise in society. It's not that anymore. It's more identity politics has taken over, at least on the federal level. On the everyday level, it's under threat, right? If you try to conduct a business based on meritocracy, you open yourself up to lawsuit, right? Um, Hate from your employees and laissez-faire. Wow, when was the last time we actually had a free market in the United States? Everything is so heavily regulated. I mean, that's why we have a Doge. That's why we have a Department of Government Efficiency, because there's just so much regulation that just slows everything down, right? I talked about not having a bullet train at least. Elon Musk tried to do the Hyperloop thing, and it's just so expensive, not because of the technology, but because of all of the regulatory hurdles that he has to overcome, right? All of the agencies' requirements that need to be satisfied, et cetera, et cetera. Individualism, wow, well, that's a crock. Individualism today is called fascism, which is exactly opposite of what it's supposed to be. And then liberty, if Harris got elected, I am sure that people would have that X would be sent back to the way it was before Musk had bought it, which means that we would have censorship again, that the government would be able to control the narrative again. And it would be a lot harder to get information out, right? Like different perspectives on things that are happening in society, right? I'm positive that that would have gone away. And then, just as we see in England, people who post things, they get a visit from the police and often are arrested, even if you're just 9 years old, which is just absolutely insane. But all of these things in the United States are under threat or on the way out because of perpetual war, right? And that's what's so crazy. American exceptionalism that has to be spread uh, through violence and through uh, the barrel of a gun. It just maybe that's not what uh, Tocqueville was talking about. And today it's just a lot of nationalism. We're the best, USA number one. But number one in what? How is the United States number one? I mean, right now, it's just basically we're number one because we have the world's reserve currency, right? We get everyone else to produce things and we just give them paper, the dollars, right? So we don't produce anything. There's no trade, um, right? And so that's why we have such massive trade deficits. So we're the best because we got the world's reserve currency, right? Everything that used to make America something to admire, something to imitate, a destination for a lot of people, yeah, a lot of that is gone today. Yeah, I told you about those Chinese students from mainland China that were so excited to come to the land of the free, and they realized that they were freer in communist China, all right, in certain ways, right? In certain ways, obviously, it's better here, but in a lot of ways, over in China, the government just does not have the ability to be able to police on the level as they do here in the United States. They're just not there yet. And so all of this American exceptionalism that has to be spread is just hypocritical authoritarianism, right? Pretty much the Democratic Party projected beyond the borders, right? Do it this way, or you're a fascist. And it's that from that line from Jack Reacher, we do what we do because it's who we are, right? There's no enough, there's no what are the limits, it's just what we do. And this idea of American exceptionalism, if it was ever something well intended, and we're talking about going across the United States, and making false promises to Native Americans and then just slaughtering women and children. I mean, this is insane. Uh, but anyway, at some point, uh, it this whole American exceptionalism idea is hijacked by neocons, people who want perpetual war. And now they believe that we spread freedom by invading countries, right? And then forcing freedom upon them, right? It's like, this is freedom, now take it. And if you don't take it, then we'll have to arrest you. It's this bizarre, weird thing uh, that Americans freely engage in. I remember thinking that, like, hey, we're there to give you freedom. Why don't you like it? What's wrong with you? And then when I was in Korea in the 90s, the whole American exceptionalism idea was mocked, right? I was in the university when I went over there doing a master's, and people were openly mocking it. If they saw someone who was white, they would say, "Yankee, go home." I was like, ooh, and that's nice. No one knows that I'm a Yankee because I look like them. And it turned out that the person they said it to was French. So she just turned around and said, I am French. And I don't know if, you know, Korean students actually, it's that racist thing. Like people who are openly racist just look ridiculous because of their ignorance, right? But, the whole American exceptionalism idea was mocked. It was called jingoism. And it was, of course, unpopular among the young university student because they were all indoctrinated with communism, right? And it always made me laugh because that's what communists want to do. And they're just more jealous because they weren't able to do it on the level that the United States was. So having said all of that, hopefully people like something does happen to the Department of Education under Trump. It's gutted somehow. And then the schools are now liberated, that more schools are now able to remember the roots of the United States, how the United States came to be, what the debate was, what the struggles were, the arguments and debates over slavery and freedom, and then teaching that more in schools today so that people can remember and not be spoon-fed all this systemic racism subjectivity. And so, with the gutting of the Department of Education, hopefully people will be reintroduced to the ideas of freedom and individualism. And then the American people can once again become a leader, but a leader by example, not by violence and war. Trump said this was a video clip played in one of Judge Knapp's interviews. I think it was with one of the people he interviewed today on Friday, and he said that it was a clip of Trump in 2015 saying that he would love to go over to Israel, have a sit down with everybody, listen to everyone's views, and then come up with a deal for lasting peace, right? Sometimes he sounds so reasonable, and hopefully, and he's old now, and it'd be surprising if he completely changed that point of view. I've been saying it for several episodes now that he's a business person, and business people realize that violence and war is bad for business, and so he wants lasting peace. Who knows what's going through his mind? I don't follow him enough to be able to know enough. I just read between the lines of some of the things that I do hear him say with the tone that he says it. And it seems like, yeah, he knows more than he lets on. But what's he going to do over there? And how is he now going to try to project any kind of American exceptionalism when the military is weak, when the economy is weak here, where the BRICS is coming more and more powerful and secure and independent and breaking away from the US sphere of influence? What comes next, and how does Trump have any kind of bargaining leverage? It remains to be seen, right? So I'm still hopeful. I'm hopeful that things will turn out better than I'm actually thinking how horrible things will turn out to be. And hopefully it'll be a very nice surprise. Excuse me, that at least he prepared the American people for all of the economic pain that will be coming, and if we can just somehow get through all of this, remember the roots of this country, we can be exceptional once again, exceptional in our prioritization of freedom and individuality, respect for property, and peace. That's it for this episode. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. I'll talk to you next time.